There comes a moment when the narcissist's magic just stops working. Their charm, their manipulation, their mind games suddenly lose power over you. You feel it deep inside. The confusion lifts, the emotional fog clears, and for the first time, you see them exactly as they are. It's not because you got stronger on your own. It's because God stepped in. He said, "Enough." Every spell, every dark intention, every word meant to break you, God turned it into your awakening. The same person who once drained your energy can't even reach your spirit now. You've become untouchable, protected by divine light. But what really happens when God breaks that control? Why does the narcissist start losing everything once their magic stops working on the chosen one? Stay with me till the end, because you're about to see what happens when divine power exposes darkness. And if this message speaks to your spirit, let me know in the comments. Your story might help another chosen one break free too. Don't forget to subscribe, because what's coming next will open your eyes even wider to how God fights for you in ways you never imagined. There comes a point in every chosen one's journey when the spell finally breaks. It doesn't happen with loud thunder or sudden chaos. It happens quietly, almost peacefully. One day, the fog begins to lift. The confusion that once felt like home no longer feels comfortable. The lies that used to sound sweet suddenly sound hollow. You start to see the narcissist for who they truly are, not through the illusion they carefully built around you. Their charm, their power, their control, all of it begins to fade. It's as if God Himself reaches down, wipes the dust from your eyes, and says, "Now look again." And when you do, everything changes. You realize that the person you thought you needed was actually sent to test your strength. You begin to notice how every word, every guilt trip, every emotional trap was designed to keep you blind. But once God's light enters, darkness has no place to hide. You no longer react the same way. You don't chase, you don't explain, you don't beg to be understood. You simply stand still, and in that stillness, there's power. The narcissist feels it too. They can sense their control slipping away, and that terrifies them. Their tricks stop working, their words lose their effect. The energy they once used to manipulate you starts bouncing back toward them. It's a strange feeling, this awakening. At first, it's painful because the truth hurts. You realize how deeply you were deceived, how much of yourself you gave away trying to be loved by someone who only wanted control. But slowly, that pain becomes clarity. The more you see, the freer you become. It's like waking from a long, dark dream, and for the first time breathing real air again. You start remembering who you were before the manipulation, before the gaslighting, before the emotional games. You remember your light, your peace, your power, and you realize it never left. It was only covered. This is the moment the narcissist's magic truly dies. Their energy depends on confusion and chaos, and now you see too clearly for that to work. Their spells, their words, their control all lose their grip because your spirit is no longer tied to theirs. God's light has exposed every hidden plan, every secret intention they thought would stay buried. You understand now that the battle was never about flesh and blood, it was spiritual. You weren't fighting a person, you were fighting the darkness that worked through them. And that darkness cannot survive where God's truth shines. So, the chosen one doesn't seek revenge. They rise in silence, covered in divine protection. Their peace becomes their armor, their faith becomes their sword, and their awareness becomes their freedom. The spell is broken, not because you fought harder, but because God fought for you. You finally understand what it means when light enters darkness. It doesn't argue, it doesn't struggle. It simply shines, and the darkness disappears.
There comes a moment when the narcissist feels something they've never felt before, power slipping from their hands. It doesn't happen all at once, but they can sense it. The energy that once fueled their control begins to weaken. Their words, once sharp like knives, no longer cut as deeply. Their manipulation, once effortless, now falls flat. They try to provoke you, but your silence disarms them. They wait for your reaction, but it never comes. And that silence, it burns them more than any argument ever could. Because silence means you've outgrown their control. It means their chaos no longer lives rent-free in your mind. The narcissist begins to panic quietly. They replay the old tactics that used to work so easily: guilt, flattery, anger, pity, but nothing lands anymore. You don't bite the bait, and that leaves them powerless. They've built their identity on controlling others, especially those with light, compassion, and empathy. But once that light turns inward, once the chosen one stops feeding their darkness with attention, their power source dries up. It's like a magician performing tricks with no audience. Suddenly the magic doesn't matter. You, the chosen one, begin to notice the shift too. Their presence no longer drains you. Their words no longer echo in your mind. The heavy energy that once followed them starts to bounce back, like a mirror reflecting every hidden intention. And while they grow restless and desperate, you grow calm and centered. The peace inside you becomes unshakable, and that peace is what destroys their control. They try harder, of course. They might play the victim, act sweet again, or pretend to change, but deep down, you can see through every act. You've developed spiritual discernment. God has opened your eyes, and once you see truth, you can't unsee it. Their flattery sounds rehearsed. Their anger looks childish. Their manipulation feels obvious. You realize that the power they once had over you was never real. It was borrowed. Borrowed from your energy, your belief, your compassion. And now that you've taken that back, they have nothing left to feed on. This is where the tables turn. The narcissist, who once felt superior and untouchable, begins to crumble under their own emptiness. They can't understand why you're not reacting, why you're not chasing, why you're not trying to fix things anymore. But the truth is simple. You've healed, you've detached, you've remembered who you are. And your silence speaks louder than any confrontation could. It tells them, you no longer have access to my energy. That's why their world starts to fall apart. Every lie they built begins to collapse. Every illusion fades, because the chosen one's strength no longer supports it. What they called love was control. What they called loyalty was dependence. But now, all of that is gone. Their energy weakens not because they lost you, but because they lost the illusion that they ever truly owned you.
There comes a sacred turning point in every chosen one's battle. The moment when you finally stop fighting in your own strength. You've tried everything: reasoning, explaining, forgiving, and even enduring silently, hoping the storm would pass. But then, something shifts deep within you. You realize you were never meant to fight this alone. That's when God steps in. His presence surrounds you like invisible armor, strong, radiant, and unbreakable. The same energy that once drained you now bounces back, unable to touch your spirit. Every whisper of gossip, every curse, every dark intention sent your way becomes powerless under the covering of His light. You begin to feel it, the calm in your soul that doesn't make sense, the peace that settles over you even when the situation hasn't changed. That's not denial, that's divine protection. God's protection doesn't always appear as a loud rescue. Sometimes it's the quiet distance that suddenly forms between you and the people who meant you harm. It's the sudden urge to withdraw, the closed door that once frustrated you but now makes perfect sense. He removes you from the battlefield not because you're weak, but because the war is no longer yours to fight. Be still, he says, and know that I am God. And in that stillness, something powerful happens. The spiritual attacks lose their aim. Every curse misses its mark. Every spell falls flat, because nothing can pierce the armor that God himself designed for his chosen ones. You might notice how certain people begin to reveal their true colors. The ones who pretended to care start slipping up. The ones who once drained your spirit can no longer look you in the eye. That's not coincidence. That's divine exposure. God's light not only protects you, it reveals what was hidden in darkness. You no longer need to fight to be understood or seen. He's handling it behind the scenes. Every lie told about you becomes the very thing that reveals their own guilt. Every attempt to shame you turns into proof of your strength. God turns their weapons into lessons, and their plots into platforms for your growth. When his protection activates, you also start to notice your inner world changing. You stop reacting to every attack. You start praying instead of panicking. You start resting instead of chasing closure. And slowly, the peace becomes permanent. That's how divine protection feels: steady, quiet, certain. You realize that no black magic, no jealousy, no manipulation can reach you when you walk in God's favor. The same energy they used to harm you now ricochets back, teaching them that touching God's anointed always has consequences. So the chosen one walks forward, not afraid, but aware. You've survived the storm not because you were stronger, but because you were covered. God's divine armor is not seen by the world, but every dark force recognizes it. And that's why, from this moment on, you're untouchable.
There comes a moment when your words stop being mere cries for help and become weapons of light. That's what happens when the power of prayer begins to move through you. Every whispered prayer, every tear that falls in silence, every moment you turn your pain into faith, it all builds a force stronger than anything darkness can create. You may not see it right away, but heaven hears it instantly. The same energy that once held you captive begins to tremble because prayer changes the atmosphere. What was meant to keep you bound begins to lose its grip. The chains start breaking, not with noise or drama, but with quiet, steady faith that refuses to die. The narcissist, the manipulator, the one who once thought they had control over your mind and emotions, they start to feel something shifting. Their words don't land the same way. Their power feels weaker. Their energy feels blocked. That's because prayer doesn't just protect you, it exposes them. It shines light on what was hidden, confuses the enemy, and sends their own energy back to them. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, think differently, not because you changed on your own, but because God started moving within you. Prayer is not begging, it's a declaration. It's saying, God, I trust you more than I fear them. And that trust dismantles everything built on lies and fear. When you pray, you invite divine order into the chaos the narcissist tried to create. You start to see patterns you never noticed. Answers appear in ways you couldn't imagine, and peace returns where there used to be anxiety. Prayer clears the fog that manipulation thrives in. It reclaims your mind, your emotions, your spirit, piece by piece. There's something powerful about praying even when you feel broken. That's when your words carry the most strength because they come from truth. The darkness can't handle truth. It feeds on illusion. So when you speak to God from your heart, the darkness begins to collapse. What they meant for harm starts turning for your good. Every silent night you thought was wasted was actually building your strength. Every time you prayed instead of reacting, heaven was recording your faith. And now, that faith becomes your shield. The narcissist doesn't understand it, how you can stay calm when they attack, how you can keep shining when they wish you'd fall. But it's simple. Your power doesn't come from them anymore. It comes from prayer. The same voice they tried to silence is now your greatest weapon. You no longer fight their way. You fight on your knees, and that's where real victory happens. Because when you pray, God moves. And when God moves, no curse, no manipulation, no darkness can stand. Every chain that once held you shatters, not by might, not by force, but by the unstoppable power of faith.
There comes a time when the illusion finally begins to crumble. The mask the narcissist wears, that image of confidence, control, and mystery, starts to crack, and you see what's underneath. For so long, they made you believe they had some kind of power over you. They used charm like a weapon, guilt like a leash, and confusion like a spell. But when God opens your eyes, everything shifts. What once looked powerful now looks small, desperate, and empty. The magic they used to hold you in place suddenly looks like what it truly is: manipulation, not power. You begin to see that it was never divine, never special, never superior. It was a show built on lies, sustained only by your belief in it. The chosen one starts to notice the details: the forced smile, the shaky confidence, the constant need for attention. You see that behind their grand performance is insecurity and fear. Their control never came from real strength. It came from illusion, the illusion that you were weaker, less valuable, and dependent on them. But now, that illusion has no hold on you. Once the light of truth shines on deception, it can't survive. Their words, which once echoed in your head, now sound meaningless. Their presence, which once felt heavy, now feels powerless. You don't even need revenge. Seeing the truth is victory enough. When the illusion breaks, there's a strange silence. You look back and wonder how you ever believed their version of reality. You realize how many times you explained yourself to someone who never wanted to understand. How often you apologized for things you didn't do. How much energy you spent trying to fix what they kept breaking. But that's what illusions do. They blur your vision, make lies look like love, and control look like care. Once God clears that fog, you see that it was all theater, and you were never the audience. You were the light that made their performance visible. Now the narcissist stands exposed. Their charm turns hollow, their games predictable, their mask unbearable to wear. People around them start noticing too. The cracks they used to hide become too wide to cover. The truth always finds a way out. What they thought was unshakable begins to collapse piece by piece. Their stories don't match. Their energy feels off. The same manipulative tricks that worked for years now fall apart in seconds. That's not coincidence. That's divine exposure. The chosen one walks away, not bitter, but awakened. You no longer see them as a powerful force, but as a wounded soul trying to fill their emptiness through control. That's why the illusion fades, because light and truth can't coexist with lies. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. The spell is broken, the stage is empty, and what's left is only truth, clear, undeniable, and free.
There comes a moment when the pain no longer breaks you, it builds you. Every tear you cried, every betrayal you endured, every heartbreak that left you shattered becomes the foundation of something powerful. You don't realize it at first. When you're in the middle of the storm, it feels endless. You think the pain will swallow you whole. But God has a way of taking the things meant to destroy you and using them to refine you instead. The same wounds that once made you weak become the very marks of your strength. The same rejection that once made you question your worth becomes proof that you were always meant for more. That's how divine transformation works. God doesn't erase your past, He repurposes it. Every moment you spent trying to understand why someone hurt you was not wasted. God was working even in the silence. When people walked away, He was making space. When everything fell apart, He was rebuilding you from the inside out. You see, the chosen one doesn't rise because life was easy. They rise because they survived what should have destroyed them. That's where divine strength is born, in the places that broke you. Pain becomes your teacher. Betrayal becomes your awakening. Loss becomes your redirection. And through it all, God is shaping you into someone unstoppable. At first, it feels unfair. You wonder why you had to go through so much. You question why God allowed the heartbreak, the manipulation, the loneliness. But later, you start to see the pattern. Every wound pushed you closer to Him. Every disappointment stripped away your illusions. Every dark night taught you to trust His timing instead of your own. The very pain that made you fall to your knees is the same pain that taught you how to pray. You learn that being broken in God's hands is safer than being whole in the wrong ones. And slowly your spirit begins to heal, not through revenge, not through validation, but through divine restoration. When God turns pain into power, something shifts in your energy. You no longer carry the weight of bitterness. You carry wisdom. You stop seeking closure from people who thrive on chaos. You stop needing apologies from those who never valued truth. Instead, you become grateful for the lessons. You realize that everything they took from you was temporary, but what God gave you in return is eternal. You now walk with discernment, peace, and authority. You've been through spiritual fire, and you came out refined, not ruined. The narcissist who once fed on your kindness no longer recognizes you. Your silence confuses them. Your peace irritates them. Your strength exposes their weakness. They can no longer use the old tricks to control you because you no longer operate on that level. You've transcended the game. You see through the manipulation, and you respond with wisdom instead of emotion. That's what divine transformation looks like. It's quiet, powerful, and irreversible. The chosen one no longer reacts, they radiate. And this new strength, it's not loud or aggressive. It's steady. It's the kind of power that comes from knowing God fought for you when no one else did. You feel His presence in your confidence, your calm, your boundaries. The tears that once fell in despair now water the seeds of purpose. What was meant to bury you became the soil that grew your anointing. That's why you no longer fear pain. It no longer defines you. You've learned that every time life breaks you, God rebuilds you stronger. Eventually, you begin to thank Him for what didn't work out. You realize that losing certain people was actually divine protection. You start to see that the heartbreak wasn't punishment, it was preparation. God was never trying to destroy you. He was revealing your true strength. He knew the version of you that depended on others couldn't step into your destiny. He needed the refined version, the one who knows her worth, walks in peace, and no longer apologizes for her light. The chosen one rises differently, not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence. Not seeking revenge, but walking in purpose. The same pain that once silenced you now gives power to your voice. You begin to help others, share your story, and guide those still trapped in the darkness you escaped. That's when you realize the full meaning of divine transformation. Your pain wasn't just for you. It was meant to awaken others too. God turns your pain into platform. Every betrayal becomes a testimony. Every heartbreak becomes a lesson in love, boundaries, and faith. And when people see you now, calm, radiant, unbothered, they have no idea what it cost you to reach this peace. But you know. You remember every sleepless night, every tear, every moment you thought you wouldn't make it. And you smile. Because now you see what God was doing all along. You didn't just survive, you evolved. You rose from the ashes, not bitter, but unshakable. You learned to trust the process, even when it didn't make sense. That's the real miracle. Because when God turns pain into power, He doesn't just change your situation, He changes you. And that version of you, that's the one no darkness can ever touch again.
There is a kind of revenge that makes no noise, no chaos, and no destruction, yet it shakes a narcissist to their core. It is the revenge of peace. When the chosen one stops reacting, stops explaining, and stops trying to prove their worth, something powerful happens. The narcissist loses control. They feed on your emotions, on your confusion, on the chaos they create in your life. Your reactions are their supply, the proof that they still have a hold on you. But when you stop giving them that power, their illusion of control begins to crumble. Nothing terrifies them more than your calm, because peace, to a narcissist, is the one thing they cannot manipulate. At first, your silence will confuse them. They'll throw every trick they know, guilt, anger, pity, or even charm, to draw you back into their web. They might provoke you with lies, twist your words, or play the victim to make you feel responsible again. But this time, something inside you is different. You don't react. You've learned that peace isn't weakness, it's power. Every time you choose silence over argument, every time you choose prayer over panic, every time you choose distance over drama, the narcissist feels their influence fade. It's like watching a storm lose its strength when there's no wind to carry it. Without your reaction, their chaos dies in their own hands. The chosen one begins to understand that not every battle needs to be fought with words. Some wars are won through stillness. Peace becomes a shield, invisible yet unbreakable. The narcissist can shout, provoke, and lie, but your calm stands like a wall they cannot climb. That calm isn't born from apathy. It's born from healing. You faced the storm. You felt the pain, and you've come out on the other side, stronger and wiser. Now you protect your energy like a sacred space. You no longer allow your emotions to be a playground for someone else's manipulation. That realization alone sets you free. The narcissist's worst nightmare is realizing they no longer control your emotions. They thrive on seeing you broken, reactive, and uncertain. But when you smile instead of argue, pray instead of panic, and walk away instead of chase, they feel powerless. Their ego begins to starve. You can see it in their eyes, the frustration, the confusion, the quiet panic of losing the one thing that fed their false sense of superiority. They will try harder for a while, using new tactics to get a rise out of you. They may suddenly act kind, pretend to change, or use others to deliver their manipulation. But it's too late. You've already seen behind the mask. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Peace is the greatest revenge because it cannot be faked or forced. It must be earned through healing. The narcissist doesn't understand peace because their mind thrives on conflict. They mistake calmness for indifference, silence for submission, and forgiveness for weakness. But what they don't realize is that peace is the final stage of freedom. It means they can no longer control your emotions, your thoughts, or your destiny. You've taken back everything they tried to steal: your joy, your confidence, your clarity. Peace becomes your crown, proof that you survived without becoming like them. You start to feel a lightness that doesn't make sense at first. The same situations that used to break you now barely move you. You see their attempts to provoke you as childish.
You start to respond with grace, or sometimes not at all. You realize you don't need to prove the truth. God already sees it. That's where the real power lies, in knowing that divine justice always moves in silence. You don't have to expose the narcissist. Their own actions do that over time. You just stay grounded, let peace guide your choices, and watch how God handles what you no longer carry. Peace changes everything. It's not just emotional calm, it's spiritual authority. When you walk in peace, you walk in alignment with God's will. You no longer fight for validation. You trust divine timing. You no longer beg for understanding. You understand yourself. You stop needing closure, because peace is closure. And the narcissist senses that. They can feel the energetic wall that now stands between you. They can no longer reach you the way they once did. You've become a mirror. Their darkness can no longer project onto you. It reflects back to them. This is when their world begins to fall apart. Without your energy, they lose their stability. The relationships they built on lies start to collapse. Their new targets don't stay long because their manipulation no longer feels convincing. Even their charm fades because it was never real to begin with. The more peace you hold, the more chaos they face within themselves. And the beauty of it all is, you don't have to do a thing. Your calm becomes their exposure. Your distance becomes their consequence. The chosen one learns that peace isn't just survival, it's transformation. You no longer seek revenge. You become living proof that healing is the ultimate victory. You start pouring your energy into purpose, creativity, and faith. The same strength that once defended you now builds something new. People begin to notice your glow, not because of what you say, but because of what you no longer entertain. You've become untouchable. The peace surrounding you is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. And when you look back, you realize that peace didn't come from escaping the narcissist. It came from understanding yourself. It came from realizing that you don't need to control what's outside of you when God is already in control. The battles that once drained you no longer matter because your focus has shifted from proving your worth to protecting your peace. You've learned that silence can speak louder than any argument. And that calm, steady energy is what breaks every chain the narcissist tried to bind you with. So the chosen one doesn't fight, doesn't chase, doesn't explain. They simply rise, gracefully, quietly, peacefully. And in that silence, they win the war that words never could. Peace becomes your greatest revenge because it restores what the narcissist tried to destroy, your spirit. It reminds you that power doesn't come from control or manipulation. It comes from knowing who you are and whose you are. You've reclaimed your energy, your identity, and your destiny. And now when the narcissist looks your way, all they see is a calm they cannot understand, a light they cannot dim, and a peace they will never possess.
There comes a moment in every chosen one's journey when the truth about their battle is finally revealed. This was never just emotional abuse. It was never only about manipulation, gaslighting, or control. It was spiritual warfare, a fight that went far beyond what your eyes could see. Every argument, every betrayal, every cycle of confusion was part of something much deeper, a war for your light, your purpose, your peace, your very soul. Narcissists are not just emotionally toxic, they are spiritual agents of chaos. They feed off the energy of others, drawing strength from confusion and pain. But when you're chosen, your soul belongs to God, and darkness cannot hold on to what's already been claimed by divine hands. In the beginning, it doesn't look like a war. It looks like love, care, admiration. The narcissist presents themselves as everything you've ever wanted, kind, attentive, maybe even spiritual. They mirror your goodness, your faith, your light, pretending to be your ally, your soulmate, or your friend. But slowly, the mask slips. You begin to notice subtle shifts, words that cut, moments of blame that don't make sense, times when your peace feels drained after being around them. That's the first sign of spiritual warfare, when your inner calm starts to disappear, even when nothing obvious has happened. The narcissist doesn't just attack your emotions, they attack your identity. They whisper lies in your spirit, making you doubt your worth, your discernment, your connection to God. They convince you that you are too sensitive, too needy, too difficult, when in truth, you are just deeply aware. You see more, feel more, and sense things most people overlook. That's your spiritual gift, not your flaw. But the narcissist's mission is to dim that light, to make you question the divine intuition that protects you. That's why their words sting so deeply. They are designed to wound the part of you that knows who you truly are. And while you fight to keep your peace, it feels like you're losing. You pray, you forgive, you try to love them through it, but nothing changes. The more good you give, the more they take. The more you explain, the more they twist your truth. It feels endless. That's when the spiritual side of the battle becomes clear. Because what you're fighting isn't just human manipulation. You're fighting a spiritual energy that thrives in darkness, confusion, and control. The narcissist becomes a vessel, knowingly or not, for that energy to work through. Their goal isn't just to break your heart, it's to break your spirit. But here's the divine truth. When God chooses you, He equips you. He never lets the enemy destroy what He created for His glory. Every tear you shed, every night you spent praying for understanding was not wasted. It was building strength, sharpening discernment, and awakening your spiritual vision. What you thought was pain was actually preparation. You were being trained in spiritual warfare, not with weapons or anger, but through prayer, endurance, and faith. You learn to fight not by reacting, but by standing still in God's peace. And then something shifts. One day you wake up and the fog is gone. The words that once cut deep no longer reach you. Their manipulation, once powerful, feels transparent. You start to see their moves before they make them. That's not coincidence, that's divine awareness. God begins to reveal their true nature to you, piece by piece. You start to understand that they were never as strong as they seemed. Their power depended on your belief in their control. Once you stop feeding that illusion, it collapses. That's when you realize the truth. This war was never yours to win by force. It was God's to win through revelation. The narcissist begins to weaken when their spiritual disguise fails. Their energy feels off, their confidence cracks, and their control fades. They try everything: guilt, gossip, anger, even playing the victim, but nothing works anymore. Because once God steps in, the outcome is already written. You win. No curse, no black magic, no manipulation can override divine protection. What once felt like a battlefield becomes a place of victory. The same attacks that once drained you now strengthen you. Every attempt they make to harm you backfires, not because you fight harder, but because you finally let God fight for you. That's the power of spiritual warfare. Once you understand it, the enemy loses its disguise. You stop seeing the narcissist as a person who holds power over you and start seeing them as a tool of the darkness that can no longer reach your light. You rise above it. Your focus shifts from them to God, from pain to purpose, from fear to faith.
You stop reacting to their chaos and start walking in divine authority. And that, more than anything, destroys their influence. You learn that peace is your greatest weapon, prayer is your armor, truth is your sword, and your silence, that sacred calm silence that comes from knowing you are protected, becomes the sound of their defeat. The narcissist may rage, scheme, and slander, but it no longer touches your soul, because you've moved beyond their reach. You're not fighting on the same level anymore. You're operating in divine alignment. In the end, the lesson is clear. This was never just about pain. It was about purpose. God allowed the battle, not to destroy you, but to awaken you, to show you what real spiritual power looks like. You didn't just survive the narcissist. You outgrew the entire battlefield. You stepped into the truth of who you are, chosen, protected, and divinely guided. The war for your soul is over, and the victory was written long before the fight even began. Because when God fights for you, there's only one outcome. You win.
There comes a moment in every chosen one's journey when the truth about their battle is finally revealed. This was never just emotional abuse. It was never only about manipulation, gaslighting, or control. It was spiritual warfare, a fight that went far beyond what your eyes could see. Every argument, every betrayal, every cycle of confusion was part of something much deeper, a war for your light, your purpose, your peace, your very soul. Narcissists are not just emotionally toxic, they are spiritual agents of chaos. They feed off the energy of others, drawing strength from confusion and pain. But when you're chosen, your soul belongs to God, and darkness cannot hold on to what's already been claimed by divine hands. In the beginning, it doesn't look like a war. It looks like love, care, admiration. The narcissist presents themselves as everything you've ever wanted, kind, attentive, maybe even spiritual. They mirror your goodness, your faith, your light, pretending to be your ally, your soulmate, or your friend. But slowly, the mask slips. You begin to notice subtle shifts, words that cut, moments of blame that don't make sense, times when your peace feels drained after being around them. That's the first sign of spiritual warfare, when your inner calm starts to disappear, even when nothing obvious has happened. The narcissist doesn't just attack your emotions, they attack your identity. They whisper lies in your spirit, making you doubt your worth, your discernment, your connection to God. They convince you that you are too sensitive, too needy, too difficult, when in truth, you are just deeply aware. You see more, feel more, and sense things most people overlook. That's your spiritual gift, not your flaw. But the narcissist's mission is to dim that light, to make you question the divine intuition that protects you. That's why their words sting so deeply. They are designed to wound the part of you that knows who you truly are. And while you fight to keep your peace, it feels like you're losing. You pray, you forgive, you try to love them through it, but nothing changes. The more good you give, the more they take. The more you explain, the more they twist your truth. It feels endless. That's when the spiritual side of the battle becomes clear. Because what you're fighting isn't just human manipulation. You're fighting a spiritual energy that thrives in darkness, confusion, and control. The narcissist becomes a vessel, knowingly or not, for that energy to work through. Their goal isn't just to break your heart, it's to break your spirit. But here's the divine truth. When God chooses you, He equips you. He never lets the enemy destroy what He created for His glory. Every tear you shed, every night you spent praying for understanding was not wasted. It was building strength, sharpening discernment, and awakening your spiritual vision. What you thought was pain was actually preparation. You were being trained in spiritual warfare, not with weapons or anger,
but through prayer, endurance, and faith. You learn to fight not by reacting, but by standing still in God's peace. And then something shifts. One day you wake up and the fog is gone. The words that once cut deep no longer reach you. Their manipulation, once powerful, feels transparent. You start to see their moves before they make them. That's not coincidence. That's divine awareness. God begins to reveal their true nature to you, piece by piece. You start to understand that they were never as strong as they seemed. Their power depended on your belief in their control. Once you stop feeding that illusion, it collapses. That's when you realize the truth. This war was never yours to win by force. It was God's to win through revelation. The narcissist begins to weaken when their spiritual disguise fails. Their energy feels off, their confidence cracks, and their control fades. They try everything: guilt, gossip, anger, even playing the victim, but nothing works anymore. Because once God steps in, the outcome is already written. You win. No curse, no black magic, no manipulation can override divine protection. What once felt like a battlefield becomes a place of victory. The same attacks that once drained you now strengthen you. Every attempt they make to harm you backfires, not because you fight harder, but because you finally let God fight for you. That's the power of spiritual warfare. Once you understand it, the enemy loses its disguise. You stop seeing the narcissist as a person who holds power over you and start seeing them as a tool of the darkness that can no longer reach your light. You rise above it. Your focus shifts from them to God, from pain to purpose, from fear to faith. You stop reacting to their chaos and start walking in divine authority. And that, more than anything, destroys their influence. You learn that peace is your greatest weapon, prayer is your armor, truth is your sword, and your silence, that sacred calm silence that comes from knowing you are protected, becomes the sound of their defeat. The narcissist may rage, scheme, and slander, but it no longer touches your soul, because you've moved beyond their reach. You're not fighting on the same level anymore. You're operating in divine alignment. In the end, the lesson is clear. This was never just about pain. It was about purpose. God allowed the battle, not to destroy you, but to awaken you, to show you what real spiritual power looks like. You didn't just survive the narcissist. You outgrew the entire battlefield. You stepped into the truth of who you are, chosen, protected, and divinely guided. The war for your soul is over, and the victory was written long before the fight even began. Because when God fights for you, there's only one outcome. You win.
There comes a moment, quiet, sacred, and almost unexplainable, when everything begins to change. The air feels lighter, the weight on your chest eases, and the fog that once clouded your mind starts to lift. It's not just a good day after a storm, it's something deeper, something spiritual. It's the return of light. After enduring so much emotional and spiritual darkness, you finally begin to feel God's presence again, not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a calm, undeniable one. The heaviness that once clung to you begins to break apart, piece by piece. Even your dreams shift. The nightmares, the confusion, the spiritual heaviness that once followed you in the night slowly fade away. Because darkness cannot stay where God's light chooses to dwell. This change doesn't happen overnight. It unfolds quietly, like dawn after a long, cold night. You notice small signs at first. You wake up with more peace than yesterday. Your mind doesn't race as much. You start feeling grateful again. Not because everything is perfect, but because you can finally breathe freely, without fear controlling you. That's how light returns. Not with noise, but with healing. You begin to feel safe in your own spirit again. You realize that the energy that once surrounded you, the confusion, tension, and exhaustion, wasn't yours to carry. It belonged to the battle you didn't even know you were fighting. The narcissist tried to cover that light, to keep you trapped in guilt and self-doubt. Their words were meant to dim your confidence. Their silence meant to drain your joy. But what they didn't understand is that your light doesn't come from human approval. It comes from God. And no manipulation, no black magic, no lie can extinguish what heaven has ignited. That's why even when you were at your lowest, something inside you refused to die. You might have felt broken, but you never lost your spark. That spark was divine, and it waited patiently for this moment, the moment of your awakening. When the light returns, clarity follows. You begin to see things as they truly are. You recognize people's intentions more easily. You notice how certain environments no longer feel right for you. You start feeling drawn to peace, solitude, prayer, and purpose. That's not just emotional recovery, it's spiritual realignment. God is restoring what was stolen from you, your peace of mind, your joy, your sense of self. The confusion that once surrounded you now transforms into wisdom. The pain that once haunted you becomes your discernment. And the most beautiful part? You start dreaming again, literally and spiritually. Your nights are no longer filled with heaviness or spiritual attacks. Instead, your dreams become clear, meaningful, and full of divine symbols. You wake up with messages in your heart, confirmations in your spirit, and ideas that feel guided. It's as if God is whispering directly to your soul. You made it through the darkness. Now watch what I'll do with the light. People around you start to notice the change, even if they can't explain it. They say you look more peaceful, more radiant, more sure of yourself. That's not confidence. That's divine restoration. It's the reflection of light returning to its rightful place. You're not the same person who walked through the fire. You're the one who came out purified. You've learned how to recognize energy, how to protect your peace, how to listen to God's voice above the noise. The narcissist may still try to reach you, but their influence feels hollow now. Their words don't cut. Their presence doesn't intimidate. You no longer see them through the eyes of fear. You see them through the eyes of truth. Their darkness looks small next to your light. They sense it too. The shift in energy, the loss of control. What once fueled them now drains them. Because when the light returns, it doesn't just illuminate, it exposes. Everything false begins to crumble. Every hidden thing comes to the surface. The narcissist's mask no longer shines, it melts under the radiance of your peace. You realize now that this was never about winning a fight. It was about rediscovering your connection with God. You didn't need to seek revenge, prove your worth, or fight back with anger. Your greatest revenge was peace, and your ultimate victory is freedom. The light that's returned to you isn't just healing your heart. It's transforming your entire reality. Doors begin to open, opportunities align. People who resonate with your new energy are drawn to you. It's divine alignment, not coincidence. And through it all, you understand something profound. The darkness never truly defeated you. It trained you. It taught you how to value peace, how to recognize truth, how to trust the divine process even when everything looked impossible. The pain prepared you for a deeper connection with God, one that no person can manipulate again. Now, your spirit feels protected, grounded, and whole. You walk differently. think differently, and love differently, not out of fear, but from wisdom. The return of light is not just the end of darkness. It's the beginning of divine purpose. You've stepped into a new season, one filled with clarity, abundance, and peace that surpasses understanding. You no longer chase validation or try to explain your journey. You simply shine. And that light, your light, becomes a beacon for others still lost in the shadows. It reminds them that no matter how dark the night, dawn always returns. Because darkness never wins. It only delays the inevitable. The moment when God's light breaks through and reminds you who you've always been, chosen, covered, and unstoppable. There comes a moment in every story of spiritual justice when the tables quietly turn and their karma begins. It doesn't happen when you expect it, and it doesn't happen because you wish it. It happens when God decides the time is right. The narcissist who once seemed untouchable, who wore their confidence like armor and their lies like perfume, begins to unravel. Slowly, their mask starts to crack. The charm that once pulled everyone in begins to repel. The same manipulative energy they use to control others starts to work against them, and the world begins to see what you always saw but couldn't prove. For so long, they thrived on deception. They built their identity on illusion, pretending to be kind, spiritual, or successful while secretly feeding off the pain they caused. They made you the villain in stories they created, and for a while, people believed them. But that's the thing about lies. They require constant maintenance. And when the narcissist's energy begins to weaken, they can't hold up their own facade anymore. The universe, under God's divine law, begins to balance the scales. The truth starts to surface, not through your words, but through their own actions. You begin to notice the signs. Their relationships start falling apart. The same people they manipulated begin to distance themselves. Their once perfect image begins to crumble. Financial issues, health problems, or emotional instability begin to show, not because you wished harm on them, but because that's how energy works. Whatever you send out returns multiplied. The lies they spread circle back to expose them. The gossip they used to destroy your name now eats away at theirs. Every seed of deception they planted starts bearing fruit, bitter, heavy, and unavoidable. God allows this not for your revenge, but for your confirmation. You don't need to lift a finger. You don't need to explain your side anymore. The divine plan doesn't require your defense. It requires your peace. Because when God starts handling your enemies, He does it in a way that leaves no doubt. Their exposure comes from within, through their arrogance, through their choices, through the same traps they once set for others. What they once used to destroy others becomes the very thing that destroys them. And while their world begins to collapse, yours begins to rise. You find yourself no longer watching them with anger, but with understanding. You realize that what's happening is justice, not punishment, but balance. God is restoring order to what was broken. The narcissist's downfall isn't your triumph out of ego. It's your liberation from bondage. It's the divine message saying, you don't have to fight battles I've already won for you. Their charm, the tool they once used to manipulate hearts, begins to lose its shine. People start seeing through their performance. The same smooth words that once deceived now sound empty, forced, even desperate. Their energy feels heavy to everyone around them because their vibration no longer matches the image they try to project. They can no longer borrow energy from others because people have started to protect their peace, just like you did. The narcissist who once thrived on control begins to feel powerless for the first time. And that's their greatest fear, losing the illusion of power. As their charm fades, so does their audience. The friends they kept for status drift away. The admiration they once demanded turns into avoidance. They find themselves surrounded by silence, the same silence they once used to punish others. It's divine irony. The games they played return to them, but now they're the only ones playing. Their isolation isn't just social, it's spiritual. When you operate in deceit for too long, you become disconnected from truth, and truth is what sustains real peace. Without it, everything collapses. But while they face their consequences, you begin to thrive. Your energy shifts higher. Your blessings multiply. The peace that once felt distant now surrounds you. You look back not with bitterness, but with gratitude, because that chapter taught you how to recognize false light from real light. You understand now that not everyone who shines is divine. Some only glow long enough to distract you from your own power. But once God restores your clarity, their false light can no longer blind you. And as the narcissist's energy continues to return to them, something miraculous happens. You stop caring about their downfall. You don't need to watch. You don't need proof. You already know that divine law never fails. God's justice may be silent, but it is sure. Every time they tried to play God in your life, they forgot there's a real God watching, a God who protects his chosen, who turns pain into purpose, and who repays not out of vengeance, but truth. Their karma isn't about punishment, it's about revelation. It shows them what you learned long ago, that you cannot build joy on another person's suffering, and you cannot fake light when your heart is rooted in darkness. Eventually, the mask becomes too heavy to wear, and everything they tried to hide comes spilling out. That's when the world sees the truth. The narcissist's fall isn't something you celebrate, it's something you witness in silence. You understand now that what's returning to them isn't cruelty, but accountability. The storm they created finally reaches their doorstep, and for the first time, they have to face themselves without anyone to blame. That's the moment their karma truly begins, when they can no longer hide from the mirror, when the mask cracks and the reflection staring back shows not the illusion they built, but the emptiness they tried to fill. And as they face the consequences of their own energy, you walk forward, free, radiant, and untouched. Because you no longer need to prove anything. God already did that for you.